to thank everyone for coming to this session. I hope your last session was eye-opening, and I'm certain this presentation will be as well. We are really lucky that we have Pamela Rohr and Debbie Niderberg here representing Hidden Sparks. I'm only going to give you the al regel echad, the on 1 foot, that Hidden Sparks is a nonprofit whose purpose is to help children with learning differences reach their full potential in school and life. I'm going to pass things over to our...
So I just, thank you. I just wanted to also thank JEIC for hosting this, convening this wonderful convention, and just wanted to also acknowledge Rachel and thank Avichai for enabling us to do a lot more work through a new grant. And also wanted to acknowledge Judith Telesnik, who was a coach with us and ran our Hidden Sparks for That Walls program. So I just wanted to frame this session. What we were hoping to do is look at this on 2 levels. Firstly, looking at the lessons that we can learn from our work together and what we can share with you. And secondly, the lessons that, from our shared work from the field, what we can advise that based on what we're trying to do in the field based on the findings.
So Hidden Sparks really started from a vision that I had as a funder, that I thought the needs of diverse learners were not being met properly, primarily in the younger classrooms. We started out mostly in lower schools when we started. And so we set out to design a teacher training, coaching, capacity building program in Jewish day schools of all denominations. The all denominations piece was very important to us. And the goal was that this would help address diverse learners and improve teaching and results for other learners in the classrooms as well. The program began with a pilot 12 years ago in 7 schools. We are now in 99 schools in 7 states as well as in Israel. So the question is, there's this idea, now what? And with this idea, I knew right away who the professional was to approach to help turn this into fruition. Debbie and I had worked together over the years on many, many projects, and we worked very well together, had mutual respect and trust for each other, and we really shared a vision of what we wanted to accomplish going forward with this idea. So to that end, I'll turn it over to Debbie, who really did most of the legwork in getting the program to where it is today.
Okay, I just want to correct that a little bit. We did the legwork, and I'm going to address this. Like part of I think we really did the legwork together. We did the due diligence together.
Correct.
Then the implementation I might have done, but in terms of the, I think what happened was, as Pamela said, we had you convinced me we had a shared vision for what we wanted to do to help struggling learners, but not just struggling learners. We were looking to improve teacher practice for all the learners in the classroom. So and looking to bring perhaps the skills and sensitivities of special education in terms of that depth of knowledge to general classroom education. And so what we did is, to start out, we went on a listening tour together. We had a hunch that kids were being counseled out of schools. We had a hunch that there were a lot of kids who were falling through the cracks, whose needs weren't being met in Jewish day schools. But we felt it was important to do our due diligence. And so we went on a listening tour and ran focus groups, meeting with school principals, meeting with different stakeholders at different levels. Also, as part of our commitment to looking at best practices in the wider field, we went outside, meeting with people from Churchill and Bank Street and other entities to try to look at what some of the best models are and bring them back into Jewish day schools. Now, what we ultimately ended up piloting was not something that existed, but it was drawn from different things that we heard. And so I guess one of the values you talked about, espoused and applied values, one of the values that was humility. We don't have the answers in the room. There's wisdom in the field. We're partnering with the field to find the best solutions together. And the other piece is that drawing in evidence. What are you seeing? What are you seeing? What are you seeing in the field? That due diligence, and what are you seeing in the field? And just to take this down to the classroom level in terms of pedagogically, this is our approach throughout in Hidden Sparks. When we work with teachers, we're working with them on observable behavior. What is the evidence that you're seeing in the classroom? We don't want them to leap to judgments or to just label a child ADD or whatever the case may be, but we want to work with them on what are you seeing, and based on what you're seeing, therefore, what are your hunches? This is actually a strategic approach because in addition to building investment, but you're able to drill down into the issue, whether it's how to improve education in the schools through a more targeted approach. In terms of a shared vision for how to get there, as Pamela had mentioned, we wanted to do professional development, right? We also knew we wanted to do something substantive that would help take root in a school. We knew that it needed to be to live in the school, that where teacher mind shifts and where the work is being done is in the classroom. So we knew we wanted it to be based in the classroom.
We also knew that we were going to put a distinct time limit on our research and do our due diligence, do our research, and then one day just say, enough, let's just get out there, let's just try. We'll make, no matter how much research we do, we're going to make mistakes anyway, so let's just make the mistakes in the field and try. And we had a strong belief that that was going to help us design, by the mistakes we would make in the field or just getting out in the field would help us design a better program. The feedback from the field would help us design a better program.
That's actually a really important point, because when a donor comes to you and says, we're not risk averse, we embrace risk, and we like the pilot approach, it's a wonderful gift because it enables you to grow responsibly and responsively to what you're seeing in the field. So, and that we were able to tweak it and grow. In fact, we started in 7 schools, resource rich, resource poor, 7 very different schools, but intentionally, but grew. And that pilot philosophy is based on a growth mindset. It's something that informs all of our work at Hidden Sparks, but it enabled us to grow, to implement, to learn, to bring the data back, to learn from that, to tweak, and we're constantly, and just in terms of other ways and some of the core values and how to get there, we framed a program, again, based on the wisdom in the field, what we were hearing, and valuable educational models. We framed a program that used coaching, incorporates capacity building and collaboration and systems. Coaching because all the research says that, Nina, can speak to this as well, and new teachers under JNTP, that one of the most powerful educational vehicles for change is really that, and from novice to expert teacher, is that coaching relationship, and we know that. And what happens in the classroom, that it's a safe space for that teacher to experiment, and so that's a core part of the program. Collaboration, because we saw in our due diligence, and we heard this, that there are silos in our Jewish day school system, that Judaic studies teachers were not communicating with general studies teacher. There was no systemic and regular coordinated review of students and a proactive, holistic approach to working with the students. So that collaboration between and across disciplines, between Judaic studies and general studies, was an essential part of the program, and that is like a non-starter when we work with schools. That schools need to make time for this. And collaboration across the board at every level. So, because it's all to benefit the students. So it's collaboration to begin with between the coach and the teacher. When the teacher when the coach comes in and they collaborate, and the teacher drives the decision about who they want to look at today. It's collaboration. I mean, meaning we're modeling and at every level. There's a scaffold to support. It's collaboration between the teacher and the student, so that the student has more buy-in. It's based on the work of Ross, Green, and Stuart Abel on collaborative problem solving. It's collaboration across disciplines. It's collaboration between teams of teachers so that you create a professional learning community. It's collaboration with the school so that this is a partnership between us, and we're both working on where we want to go together. We're helping you, but we're a partnership. And finally, it's collaboration with other organizations in the field. Finally, capacity building. You know, you can't go into you can't start a program without an exit strategy. You can't help to shift a school culture without building buy-in and leaving experts in the school. So another core piece is training internal coaches and building the school's capacity to work with other teachers. In terms of, and then, you know, of course, systems and the collaboration is the coordinated meetings and the collaboration. These were all part of our work on systems, because as Michael Fullen, who's a big writer on school change, systems learn and work together, and that, in fact, the learning is the work. In terms of, I think another part, like in terms of our roles, you know, there was just a basic fundamental mutual respect
And trust.
You know, you come to it as a day school leader who's been in the trenches, and in a day school leadership reason, in a day school leadership capacity for all the right reasons, who really understands the larger issues. And our board members also, they bring a perspective on success in the business world, et cetera. So I think the fact that we both bring different skills and strategies to the table
Makes for a
is
good
very
team.
helpful. But sometimes I'll, you know, even operationally, I'll still say, you know, I'm struggling with something, can you help me unpack this? And I think it was the combination of, from the beginning, having an alignment of mission, an alignment of how we're going to get there, respect for roles. I'm going to talk about reflection as well. That you know, that helped us move this forward. Just again, educationally, something that is modeled in terms of respect for different roles is. We take that approach also with the schools that we work in, with, you know, again, that there's shared wisdom in the room, whether it's the teacher or it's the school, there's a lot of expertise that they bring to it, and or the teacher building alliances with the students. And finally, the value of reflection. I think that this is key. Throughout our work, we're constantly reflecting on we're reflecting with the schools, benchmarking mid-year, end-year. How are we doing? How are we doing towards our shared goals? How are we doing towards sustainability? So we're constantly having those meetings. We have that between our coaches and our teachers, and organizationally we're constantly reflecting.
And we're constantly tweaking and changing.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it.
We'll open up to questions then.
Yeah.
I saw hands start to go.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something that we didn't mention, is that we found that leadership is really so important
Within
in
the
our
school.
work together. You know, that because this is there's so much work and depth involved in this, that a leader has to, if they're not driving it front and center, at least, and that's ideal, but at least they have to be supporting it and not standing in the way of the coaching.
I just have one question from your informatics here. What do you think accounts for, I mean, this is amazing, some of the results that you have here, they're all amazing. But the lowest one is in speaking to parents more. What do you think accounts for that?
In speaking to parents more effectively, meaning, first of all, I just have to say that was done a few years ago. We don't do, our work has focused mostly on our work with the teacher. We haven't focused as much. We haven't focused so much on work with parents, meaning we'll work with the teachers around report card times, but we as an organization have decided we need to focus on our work with the teachers. And so we don't work with parents at all yet. Yeah. Did you want to say something?
Well, I'm just curious if, I have no idea what your data is on this. The skill set and the dispositions required to speak to parents are often so different from the strengths that teachers feel they have. They might have those strengths and dispositions, but that's not necessarily a comfortable space for teachers. And that is a whole other area of professional development that would almost cloud the work that you're doing, right? 'Cause, I mean, it's definitely connected, but it really is a different space for teachers to inhabit that isn't so comfortable for them. Oh my gosh, yes. If anyone wants to fund that,
You don't get any training in it at all.
it's right.
Yeah.
And it's so important, especially when parents are feeling that their kids' needs are not being met appropriately. And then it can spiral up when they feel that the school is making commitments that they're not honoring. And it's...
I'll tell you what we do. What we try to do is we try to help teachers get to know the students much better. And we try to help teachers get to know them not in general terms, but in specific terms, and to drill down, meaning we don't like to generalize about students. We'll work with the teachers on really helping figure out where the obstacles are. So that before report cards, for example, as just one example, they will be able to know more specifically about how to describe their student. But the other piece of that is we're looking to work with them on not just describing, but strategies today, every single day in the classroom that they're meeting with that student to address that student differently. Whether it's accommodations for that student and a shift in teaching that will take into account the needs of the whole classroom. So we're really working on both individual and whole classroom sensitivity.
I just want to piggyback one more thing because I just remembered when I was a coach, there was
Yeah,
a particular teacher who she didn't yet have the language, the Hidden Sparks language, but she had a lot of that impulse and understanding and intuition into student learning. And one of the things she said to me the day after her parent-teacher conferences, it was a teacher I was coaching, she said, my parent-teacher conferences were completely different because now I had language to explain to parents what I was seeing and what I was doing. So it's almost like she started much further on in the development, and so she was able to transfer that knowledge to parents. So maybe over time, and since this is an old one, maybe over time there are teachers who are feeling that impact.
Right, we kept those results in because it was Columbia University, but it was a few years ago. So yeah.
It's not a question tonight.
I'm just wondering if you feel that, does your model change in dramatic ways depending on what type of school it is, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in Israel, the demographic of the school. And I'm definitely hearing that you always need to be specific to the student, but I'm just curious if certain cultural differences in schools and demographics vastly change your perspective with how you approach teachers and how you approach schools.
That's a great question. The answer is yes, it's due to a lot of different factors. It's due to sometimes school size, right? So in one school we're in, for example, we tend not to begin in schools that have 1,600 students, for example, because if one of our goals is to help create a school-based culture and to have that influence, it's going to be really hard to do that in 5 years with 1,600 students. So we tend to, those are sort of outlying schools. We try to work more so with schools where we can, by the end of 5 years, have an internal coach working, or someone from the faculty working with each classroom. Culturally, it has also been different. In one of the schools we were working with in the early years, well, I'll say two things. I'll say, number one, we're currently working with a school where the parents want to see the teachers very focused on discipline, okay, and that's in part a cultural. We are now working with the school and with a school leader, because this is something we realize that we need to, over years, we need to provide also mentoring for the school leader, separate mentoring with a school leader on creating change in the school. We're now working with a school leader on how to institute a school-wide collaborative problem-solving approach, okay? Which is different, really different from discipline, because it takes into account the student, and they try to look, so it does depend on culture, meaning we're trying to work with the principal to have to create a response, but that is more student empowered, and it's a shift in culture. So so there are lots of different factors.
And the Israeli schools are very different than the American schools.
Yeah, the school size also impacts. Yeah.
I wonder if you'd speak a bit to, I guess I'll call it the chemistry of collaboration. Right. This is an idea that was born from you, Pam, and you were blessed to know a professional you felt would be such a great fit for you. But as you think about all the different elements that you share in common, how the delivery might be, what the values are, using outside resources beyond the Jewish community, humility. I mean, there's a number of things you talked about. Where is the balance in this chemistry? How, I heard Pam, you talk about going on this listening tour with Debbie, right? Really being an active part of the due diligence. Where do you both kind of find those lines of chemistry of how much is the right mix for you as the funder to be in, where maybe traditionally people wouldn't expect a funder to be involved? The same for you, Debbie. Where do you find that maybe you're involved in ways and thinking about things that maybe typically funders are more likely to think about? What have you found in terms of that chemistry? Maybe a few more portions of that and a few less of that is making it work.
Go ahead.
Okay. In terms of the chemistry of collaboration, look, I think we're really lucky to be working together. We bring different things to the table, but it's a relationship, and I think we also both work on building on it, and it models our work with schools, and it models our work with the teachers, with their students, meaning that how to create buy-in. Like we work together to go on the listening tour together. We work together on strategic planning. We work together, so coming to the decisions together. In terms of the right mix, I think we've gone through different stages. So in the beginning,
it also depends on what the program needs at any given time, and that's constantly evolving. I think there were. I mean, look, to be perfectly honest, we never realized that this was going to be as successful as it is, and in as many schools as it is, so that's the good news. But there were challenges, and from the funding point of view, how much money were we willing to put into this? Were we interested in leaving the New York metropolitan area, not just because it was gonna cost money to do that, but we didn't have the resources, we weren't going to, we felt strongly that, in my mind, I call this a little bit of a jewel of a program, and it really wasn't the desire at the beginning to make this a huge program. It was always a desire to keep it as sort of as a boutique jewel program. But we worked together to figure out when other cities called us or other foundations called us as to how they could help expand the program. We really had to work together of models that we could use to continue our ability to control the program and make sure it would continue to have the quality that we wanted it to have, so some sort of quality control, while at the same time more or less handing it over to those other communities, because there was just so much we were willing to invest in going to, a Maryland, for instance. So we strategically felt that we had to look for local partners who we could work together with to do that. So, those are things that we didn't anticipate having to need to do, that we worked through together.
Right, and I would just say, just also in terms of the right mix, like in the early years, I think we were more in the trenches together
Yes.
on some of
Well,
the
it was more design.
Yeah, and some of the day-to-day decisions, and then as we developed a team and developed a staff, it moved more towards governance and still strategic decision making at certain points. But again, there will be many times when I'll call you and I'll say, can you please help me figure this out together, because I'm stuck, or anyone who knows you and George know that you're pretty anonymous oftentimes, and I try to respect that. But sometimes, like occasionally, I've said, look, we really need to use your name on this because we need to be able to attract other donors, and so et cetera. So that's, I think it's just, I think there's, a lot is about relationships, a lot is about honesty, transparency, shared values,
Respect.
yeah. Which is something that is also so important to our relationship in the field and education at every level. It's so important to I think we got that from the donors in terms of respecting the professionals, and our whole team feels respected, right? And we got that at the very highest levels, and I think it's something we need to then model, which we all do, but need to be very conscious about modeling in our schools. Respect for the school leaders, respect for the teachers who are in the trenches every day,
Students.
and for students, and having that collaborative discussion, because it empowers both, and it builds buy-in.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll buy everyone a little bit.